you'd like to think somehow you left this place a little better than it was. And I can think of no people on earth who need a place better than where they are than homeless people. And I think I'm grateful to Austin Street for the work you do. When I first thought of homelessness, I thought of one or two very nice people taking care of 12 winos. I mean, I was wrong just like everybody else is wrong about homelessness. And then you come to understand what a complex problem it is. The varying types of human beings you deal with, the incredible, all different circumstances of these people. And you then think, thank God there's a place like this. In our city, thank God there are a handful of places like this that care to get down on their hands and knees and in their dirt of dealing with people who are at the very low points of their lives.
Welcome to this special season of the More Than Sunday podcast, where we've partnered with Austin Street Center to share stories of our neighbors who have experienced homelessness and ways that we can all work together to help them home. I'm your host, Rohini Drake.
And I'm Daniel Roby, the CEO of Austin Street Center. And we have with us a very special guest today. So Austin Street Center board member, longtime supporter and friend, Norm Hitzges. I think it's 48 years on the air and
continuously,
yeah. Straight and Texas Hall of Fame, Sports Radio Hall of Fame, and then also the host of the daily podcast.
Yes, we do a podcast called Just Wondering with Norm Hitzges. It's 5 days a week. It's about 6 or 8 minutes in length because, unlike you guys, I can't be interesting for 30 minutes, okay?
Well, I beg to differ because on the Norm-A-Thon every year, you spend 18 hours of being very interesting. So, we're very grateful at Austin Street for all your support.
Daniel remembers Norm-A-Thon only as 18 hours. When we started this event to support Austin Street, it was 24 hours continuously on the air. And after about 3 years, my producer, Mark Friedman, the late Mark Friedman, passed away last year. My producer and I sat there and said, not many people are given money at 3:34 in the morning. So we shortened it to 18 hours.
That was probably a good idea.
Yes.
So, we're glad to have you with us.
Really good to be here.
Thank you so much. Well, so as you're saying, you spent 3 years doing 24 hours supporting Austin Street Center. So I'm curious, how did you first get connected with Austin Street? What called you to want to support?
Gee, this goes way, way, way back into the 70s. I continued to be on the air with public radio here, KERA, but I'd taken a job with Newsweek in New York, producing sports primarily, but one news feature every week. And they'd be sent to about, 75 or 100 Newsweek stations around the country for them to run when they had slow news days or they thought it was particularly a good story. And I wanted to do a story on homelessness. And I remembered Austin Street from when I was here. And I thought that'd be a great place to do a story. And I had a cameraman named Jay Ridman, and I wish I could show you the shot. It is one of the lasting images I remember of all the images from years in media. We did the story, and Jay, they had these big kettles of soup they were serving. It was a cold day. And think of the kettle of soup here. And the people were coming past with a bowl like this. Mm-hmm. Jay got down here below the edge of the kettle looking up. And you saw the edge of the kettle and all this steam coming up from the soup. And people coming by with their cup out like this. Mm-hmm. It's such a moving piece of footage. Mm-hmm. But that was my first contact. I came back here, then renewed contact with Bubba and Harry daily, and then now 24 years ago, got into the Norm-A-Thon, but there was another contact there also. And that's when Austin Street wanted to build a place called Pathway House, as I recall.
That's right.
And I thought, you know what? Sports teams should help build this. So I got the owners of sports teams to come to Austin Street with me. And Mr. Perot and Mr. Hicks, Tom Hicks, one of the Stars and the Rangers then, joined me there, took the tour, saw everything, and committed, let's just say, a fairly significant amount of money.
Absolutely was significant.
And I brought Jerry Jones down there. Well, Jerry's a sideshow. You know, Jerry's his own. I mean, Jerry, if you just brought him into the studio, turned the lights on, Jerry could do a couple of hours. Yeah. Nobody would have to ask him any questions or talk to him or anything. Jerry could just do a couple of hours. Well, I took him down to Austin Street. And Jerry has this huge connection with Salvation Army. And eventually, Jerry told me, I'm sorry, but I've just got this connection with the Salvation Army, and I don't want to have any effect on that. So I understood that. But while he's there, you got to picture like 50 or 75 homeless people all gathered around because they know Jerry Jones.
Yeah,
okay?
Absolutely.
So, and one of them says, Mr. Jones, is that a Super Bowl ring? And of course, I don't know if you've seen Super Bowl rings. They're not rings. They're small hovercraft.
Yeah, right.
You know, they sort of... Anyway, he said, well, yes, it is. And he takes it off and he hands it to the guy. And the ring starts passing through the group. And forgive me for saying this, but this little thought occurred to me. I gotta watch.
I hope that ring comes back.
I gotta get that ring back for Jerry. But it was a lovely time, and eventually, Pathway House did get built.
It did,
and then the connection with Norm-A-Thon started.
Well, and I gotta say, because that Pathway House, ended up hosting a women's program that Austin Street calls the Sisterhood, and literally right now as we're talking, they're having one of their first graduation ceremonies for the ladies that have gone through that program, done really well, working on all their all the things to transition out of their homeless situation, all the different counseling support they've gotten while they've been there. So tell Jerry and everyone else that made such an impact. And I wasn't there at the time. I was probably still in junior high or something. But it was a very meaningful thing to Austin Street and still being put to good use today.
Well, so. I know the Sisterhood because my wife Mary.
That's right.
Has gone down there and taught yoga to the Sisterhood. Yeah. So we're well aware of that. And I think people think of homelessness as a male thing. It's not a male thing.
That's right.
There are so many reasons people wind up on the street. One of the saddest reasons about women winding up on the street is that the street can become, in their opinion, a kinder place than home. Their treatment at home gets to the point where they feel the better option is to just live on the street. And there is something terribly sad about that.
There is.
That's really true. And it kind of makes me wonder then, there are people that support Austin Street Center or support other organizations for causes that are personal to them. And when they tell the story, there's some personal connection. For you, it sounds like a picture kind of started it all. Were there any other personal connections that you've felt or experienced through your work in support of Austin Street?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, I will try to keep this story very brief. I was in a terrible auto accident in the early 70s. I was coming north on 35. A woman was coming south on 35, and that's when there was only a grassy median. It was a really heavy rainstorm. She lost control of her car, hit me almost head on coming the other way. Wow. She was killed in the crash. I spent a fair amount of time in the hospital. And I went back to school, and I was pretty beaten up. And I went to see the doctor that spring, and he said, let me tell you, you ought to just go someplace and let your body heal. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, that sounds nice, but I don't have any money. And he said, well, I can't help you with that. But he said, you ought to go someplace and just relax. Yeah. And so, where can you go that you don't have to pay rent in the world? How about the beach? Yes. If you go straight south and across the causeway from Corpus Christi, you can go left to the city of Port Aransas, mm-hmm. or you can keep going to a beach called Malaki. And I spent several weeks there that summer, sleeping on the sand, living on cheese sandwiches and bread and mustard, because I had a little money, but I just didn't have enough to pay rent places and things like that. So it became home for a while. I don't want to dress this up by saying I was homeless. I had a place to go back to, school. I had friends. I could then get a time where I could start working to pay my rent. But that gave me the feeling of having no home.
That sounds like such a transformative experience. And, in many ways, and I hope that during that period of time that there was some recovery, there was some healing for all that you had been through. And it's really not dissimilar from what Austin Street wants to provide, right? Because what you're talking about is you've been through a traumatic situation, right? And, there were limited resources, and you needed a place to heal and recover. And, in a similar way, right? Austin Street wants to be a place that, it's more than a meal, it's more than a bed, it's more than just, a big warehouse, right? And that's part of the new building that we've been, working on together, that it's now operational, that it is, maybe it's not quite the beach, right? But hopefully it's a positive environment where people can, get the help they need to work through. Because, there's so many things that drive people to homelessness, but the one common factor seems to be a traumatic circumstance or situation.
Well, there are so many ways that people become homeless. Many of them, they don't want to be homeless. It's a set of circumstances that have put that person on the street. And I think people who don't understand homelessness think of homeless shelters as stash places. It's where we stash all these hurting homeless people. And I think they think of them as forgive me for using this phrase, winos.
Yeah.
They know many of them are sick, and you deal with all of them.
Yeah.
But there are a set of people who want back in society.
Absolutely.
They do not want to be homeless. Coming here today, Mary and I failed to take the turn on the Bush Freeway and then had to double back. And there was a man standing there, leaned up against the wall of the highway with a sign that said, "Any help?" And I was reminded again of Austin Street, because you're the definition of any help. Are you sick? What's wrong? You get an incredible variety of people. I also think people think of homeless people as being old, and that is not true. But you deal with almost every circumstance imaginable. Look at you all when it got cold. There are people who don't want to come in off the street. You deal with them all the time. I don't know why. They don't want the help that Austin Street can provide. They want to stay on the street. I think they've gotten so used to being out there, it's the only life they know. But when it gets to be 20, and that's life-threatening, those people need care.
Yeah.
And to snap into action like you all do all the time is just incredible. And it's not just to give them a meal, it's to give them a place to stay. It's to take care of them. You don't have to go outside. It's cold outside today. Stay in, rest. Do you need clothing? Whatever. And I'm sorry to say this, but you can't save everyone.
That's true.
There are people that you can give the most amazing amount of kindness to, and they go back on the street. I don't know why, but you don't seem to have to know why. If you give them a week's care and then they leave again, I wouldn't know how to take that or explain that. I remember years and years and years ago, I went down to Austin Street, and there was a guy down there named Willie. And I would drop by Austin Street with some regularity, and Willie would always be there to say hello. Willie helped take the clothes in, and Willie was just... He was a good guy, and he liked sports, by the way, so I think that maybe made me a little more favored when I arrived. But I got there one time, and I said, "Where's Willie today?" And somebody simply said to me, "He's gone back over the bridge," which was the phrase for them then. That he'd gone back out on the street. Yeah. And I quite honestly don't know how you deal with that, given the amount of care and patience and love you pour into that person, and to see that person go back to a life that she or he doesn't have to. I don't know how that would affect me.
Yeah, there's been 19 people over the past little over a year that is no longer with us, that have moved on to the other side of eternity. When people come to us, they come medically compromised, they come with all kinds of challenges, but we take care and delight in knowing that at least while they're with us, right, they're loved, they're cared for, they have everything they need. They've got food to fill their stomach in, they've got shelter, they've got clothing, they've got a community, they've got addiction treatment and, mental health treatment and all the different things that we can provide. And so, you hope that sometimes, you do things for transformation, and we certainly see those stories. We've seen 500 people get out of homelessness every year, but sometimes you just do it because it's the right thing to do. And that, that matters too.
You left out one thing, Daniel.
What's that?
You left out that those people see people doing the work of the Lord. And sometimes people at the bottom need to see that. I will always say to people, you take that person standing by the road today with a sign that says any help, hasn't shaved in a fairly long time. I'm going to guess about bathing and clothing, okay? God wants that soul as much as he wants mine. God wants that soul. Now, we may all drive past that person and say, I don't want that person. But God does.
Yeah, I love that you've tied that in, because it reminds me of an interaction that I've had, and you may, I don't even know if you would remember this, but I was at the grocery store, several weeks ago and checking out, and got talking to the cashier, and they were, telling me, what do you do? And I was telling them about Austin Street, and they're like, oh yeah, I know Austin Street and Norm. And I was like, oh great. He's like, yeah, Norm, do you know Norm? And I said, yes. And he was like, yeah, I think I'm in a regular Bible study with Norm. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of like, taken aback, this random person that I just met, and they were a friend of yours. I think it's clear to me that your connection to the work happening in Austin Street is more than just something to give your time to. That is somehow connected into your beliefs and your morals and your desire to do good in the world. I'm grateful for that, and wanted to say, is that where you think was the prompting to get involved, or do you think it was just circumstance? How would you?
I would be wrong if I told you it was anything more than circumstance. But I think all of us would like to find something, maybe not all of us, I shouldn't say that. I think we'd like to find some place we can make an impact, wherever that impact is. It doesn't have to be religious. It doesn't have to be homeless. Sometimes people want to make an impact by piling up as much money as they can. That's their choice of pursuit in life. But you'd like to think somehow you left this place a little better than it was. And I can think of no people on earth who need a place better than where they are, than homeless people. And I think I'm grateful to Austin Street for the work you do. When I first thought of homelessness, I thought of one or two very nice people taking care of 12 winos. I mean, I was wrong, just like everybody else is wrong about homelessness. And then you come to understand what a complex problem it is. The varying types of human beings you deal with, the incredible, all different circumstances of these people. And you then think, thank God there's a place like this. In our city, thank God there are a handful of places like this that care to get down on their hands and knees and in their dirt of dealing with people who are at the very low points of their lives.
Norm, I appreciate you saying that. And a little bit before, you mentioned how personally you can't imagine the work that those who actually work at Austin Street do day in and day out. I feel the same way. And I know that people listening may also feel that this is a special work, a special call for special people to do. But just as you sort of implied now, that you don't have to be employed by Austin Street to make a difference. You don't necessarily have to have a platform of a podcast or being on the radio to make a difference. That they're the people that are listening to you speak right now and can really hear your heart as you're sharing your love and respect for those who are experiencing homelessness, that anybody can get involved in the ways that are gifted to them.
Well, I agree. Daniel knows a fellow named Dean Exaros from Holy Trinity Greek Orthodox Church. They come down and serve. And Mary and I have a friend, a pastor named Brandon Thomas with Keystone. And Brandon realized, from Brandon's listener to the show or friends, wait a minute, what can Keystone do? So every Christmas they have these giant containers that they simply say to people, bring stuff. Bring coats, bring blankets, bring socks, bring whatever they might need at Austin Street. There are many ways besides money to help. Austin Street needs manpower to serve. I can remember, you remember the old building, Daniel. What am I telling you?
Sure do.
I mean, I would say fondly, but toward the end, maybe not fondly. It was for those who don't know, it was a warehouse is what it was.
Yeah.
And it warehoused about 300 people. But I remember way back that there had been a person there who Austin Street had helped out of homelessness, who then got a job, a real job, which Austin Street gets for loads of people every year. This person's job was becoming a kind of intern or assistant in heating and air conditioning. And his company then would give him to Austin Street, as I recall, I might be wrong here, once every 6 months, once every year, to just make sure all the units were working well. And I'm thinking, gee, yeah, if somebody out there has a heating and air conditioning company and wants to loan a really good person to Austin Street, well, come on. And there's so many ways to help. So many ways. In fact, Daniel, you said you didn't have a beach. Somebody out there may be able to bring 2 big truckloads of sand, and you can build that beach out in the backyard there.
Well, it's funny we talk about beaches because upcoming fundraiser, right, May the 2nd at 5:30 at the Fashion Industry Gala in downtown, we are going to be doing an auction for No Place Like Home, our annual spring fundraiser, and people can bid on a chance to go to the beach, and that money ends up going to Austin Street to end people's homelessness. So here we're bringing it all back together. So.
Isn't it amazing how many people would like to help even though they can't help directly? Mm-hmm. Look at all the gifts that get donated to us for the Norm-A-Thon. Big trips, unbelievable things. Pat Green agreeing to his own personal in-your-house concert. And gee, I mean, Serenian Bay gives you a weekend for 4 people. And I could go on and on and on with the dinners and the trips and the tickets. And they're never going to work at Austin Street. But they understand that a donation can help.
That's right.
It can really help if it's a donation that has worth from an auction standpoint. It's like indirectly, you're giving that money to Austin Street.
Well, and that's beautiful. And I just want to thank you, Norm, for taking the time, spending the time with us today to share your story of how you've gotten connected with Austin Street, and really for the encouragement that I think you've given all of us, me included, that we all have something that we could give, that we could pour into this mission, whether it's Austin Street, whether it's some form of doing good, making the place better than we found it. I just appreciate you taking the time to be with us today.
Let me just finish by telling you, I don't know why I'm not homeless. a lot of people who are homeless can't quite figure out how they got to that low point. People don't want to be homeless. It happens to them. And once it happens to them, somebody needs to care for them. And I just appreciate the work that Austin Street does so much. I'm happy to have had some impact with the Norm-A-Thon, with starting the Humble Beginnings Luncheon, but I'm just thankful to have had something to do with the kind of wonderful treatment the people who come to Austin Street get.
Thank you, Norm, for coming. Thank you for, I believe we counted up all the support over the years for the Norm-A-Thon. I believe that number was around about $9 million.
It's $9.5 million now, and that's only cash. Mm-hmm. That's only cash. Mm-hmm. It doesn't include all the other people who have contributed things. We do a clothes drive every year as part of the Whataburger Norm-A-Thon. But this year we're going to reach 10 million. We're going to reach another 500,000 this year. I'm serious, because 10 is a nice round number. It
is. Thank you, Norm, for all you've given. Thank you, Rohini, for hosting us today, and thank you to all the listeners who have taken time out of their day to be involved in the More Than Sunday podcast. And don't forget to tune in on the Just Wondering podcast as well with Norm Hitzges.
Yes, thank you so much for listening. I want to make sure that everybody listening knows that, we're in the middle of this special season of More Than Sunday as we've partnered with Austin Street. And we would love to encourage you to subscribe to this podcast. So you can go back, if you haven't heard the other episodes prior to this, that you could catch up, you could listen, and that you will also get notified when our new episodes drop. And then I also wanted to take this time to again reiterate what Daniel said. The upcoming May 2nd, No Place Like Home fundraiser for Austin Street Center. There's still time for you to get tickets and attend or support if you would like to. And then Daniel, you mentioned on the previous episode about the new Austin Street Home branding of fragrances, candles, and diffusers. And we have them here. If you're watching the podcast, you could see them here on this table. They smell lovely and wonderful. And Daniel, would you just remind us how we can purchase those, since we know that all of that money goes to support Austin Street and its mission?
Do you need a model here?
Oh, and look at this, a beautiful modeling by Norm.
Perfect. Couldn't ask for a better model. So go to austinstreet.org. You can purchase the candles there. Austin Street Home is the name of the brand. We hope that we'll host them in stores here in the North Texas area, but the best place to get them is on the website. And every amount of profit, every candle we sell, money goes back to Austin Street Center to support our programs and work. So thank you for your support.
Well, thank you, Daniel, for being here. Norm, thanks again for being here. And thank you so much for listening or watching. We hope you have a wonderful week.